I'm now joined by Felix Kybart, who looks after alternative fuels for MEN truck and bus. So he's going to give us an overview, a vision, if you like, of how MEN is going to meet the very stringent EU targets for CO2 reduction by 2025 and 2030. And you have to reduce CO2 emissions across your fleet. So, as I said, we've got the electric van here today.
Yes.
You haven't brought the electric truck, which is at the CV show. And these targets are obviously designed for heavier vehicles, over 16 tonnes, which is going to be a challenge for all the manufacturers. What's MEN's vision of the future? How are you going to meet these CO2 reduction targets, first of all?
Well, as you mentioned, these targets are quite challenging for all of us, for the entire industry. And of course, we'll go the traditional way with diesel and optimize that, but we see to match that actually for 2025, we also have to have emission-free vehicles in our portfolio. So that's why we started the initiative I'm leading already 3 years ago, and we focused on the areas where the pressure is the highest, which is the urban area. So an electric city bus, an electric distribution truck, and like we show here, the van are the answers towards that. Now the legislation, minus 15% until 2025 is focused on 16 tons and above. We didn't expect it that way, but we are prepared for that. Yeah, we have 26-ton trucks already electrified in operation in Austria, and that very well. And with tremendous feedback also throughout the winter regarding reliability, performance, and so on. And I think we are on the right track with that to meet that.
Yes. So the technology, it's being tested on the roads now with operators.
Yes.
How quickly will it be selling in sufficient volumes to actually make a significant contribution towards your 2025 target?
Well, the boundary conditions need to match. And for our customers, it's a question of at which cost can I operate these? So it's not only the price, but also energy cost per kilometer, repair and maintenance, and so on. And especially for the last 2 points, electric vehicles have a tremendous advantage. Yeah, because electricity per kilometer is strongly cheaper than what you have with diesel. So over the time, if you take a total cost of ownership over the lifetime of a truck or a bus, we are convinced that within the 20s, TCO parity can be achieved, and that will determine the breakthrough point for these technologies.
Right. Okay.
At the moment, it is nice that we have customers that are early adopters, that are not only interested in this technology, but also want to push this forward and learn with that. We want to learn with that. We have great partnerships there with really important companies. However, there needs to be a change in society, because the energy needs to become clean.
Yes.
So that's why electricity producers, mineral oil companies need to address this now. And I was asked here many times, do we have enough electricity? I would say, yes, we do.
Yes.
But the challenge is for the network. Do we have it at the points available where we need it?
Yes.
And the amount how we need it, and that's, for example, in depots of customers that you just need more electricity, and that is getting provided there and clean.
Well, it's like many alternative fuels, isn't it? Like gas and electric. It's a chicken and egg thing. Unless the vehicles are out there, the investment in the infrastructure won't go in.
Yeah.
But without the investment in infrastructure, no one's going to take a chance on buying these vehicles.
Yeah, and I think their politicians have quite a lever in their hand.
Yes.
And we see that in different European countries that there are subsidies. And if companies invest now to equip their depots with charging equipment,
Yes.
that works.
Yes.
Yeah, if trucks or buses are relieved from road taxation or things like that, then it pays off.
Yes.
So politicians, society have quite a lever in their hand to do so.
Yes.
It is important that we not only take a look at our vehicles and provide them, but also serve this entire ecosystem.
Yes.
And that's why we, for example, have what we call MEN Transport Solutions, where we analyze what the customers want, on which ways they want to operate their vehicles, and we can consult them on how to do that in an optimal way, so
Yes.
that in the end they can truly achieve this TCO advantage
Yes.
that I talked about.
The trials here are taking place on the continent in Austria, I believe.
Yeah.
How have they been going, and how soon, if I'm DPD or DHL in the UK,
Yeah.
how soon we'll be able to buy a right-hand drive 26-ton electric truck to put in my fleet?
Yeah. Not the first time that I hear this question, and it's important, yeah, and that's our way of doing that. We see that these trucks perform exceptionally well in Austria, especially regarding reliability. We had a tough winter, snow, it was freezing and so on, snow chains on the electric trucks, but not on a single day these trucks, not one of them needed to get in for an unexpected repair.
Wow.
And knock on wood, I mean, it paid off that we developed and engineered so much, that we tested it so strongly, and customers are happy.
Yeah.
Customers are really happy, and that's transferable, of course, to the UK and to other countries, because the way goods are getting delivered, especially in towards city, is comparable.
Yes.
You can compare Vienna, I think, with Manchester, with London,
Yes.
Birmingham,
Yes.
and so on. So we learn a lot, our customers learn a lot throughout the daily operation. How do I charge? When do I charge? How can I bring the cost down? What's essential for communication between charging equipment and the vehicle in the daily operation with people that are regular drivers. Yeah.
Yes.
And it works so well.
Yes.
We're very happy.
Good.
And the customers too.
So the second part of the question is, UK operator, when can I buy one?
That's at the moment under discussion also with major customers here.
Yes.
The major challenge is not to put a steering wheel on the other side. Yeah. And I think we are on a good way, and we can offer things. Please excuse that I will not mention a date or a year. I think it's understandable.
Okay. All right.
But
Well, let me turn the question around then and say, by 2030, let's say, not 2025, by 2030, what percentage of MEN heavy truck sales do you think will be zero emissions?
Might be different between countries, might depend on taxation, might strongly depend on how the infrastructure is getting built up. Personally, I'm convinced that for urban applications, battery electric vehicles are the ones that will at that time beat diesel by TCO and better than any other drivetrain technology. For long haul, I think it's still open, because it does not only depend on what we can deliver technology-wise, it also depends on how costs for example, hydrogen can come down. At the moment, I see that battery costs are coming down drastically, and big step forwards, and that the energy density increases significantly. But as I said, it's open, because there are many other factors that can influence it. What is essential is that whatever kind of energy is used as a base is green. If that's not the case, if it's gray, then we do not achieve the target.
No.
But to come back to your question, for city buses, we expect that by the mid of the 20s, half of our new vehicle production will be purely electric.
Wow.
And the next segment in which that will pick up is distribution trucks. And because of the variances and so on, in long haul, we really need to see.
Yes. Do you see there being an intermediate step with some sort of hybrid, or a range extender, or a parallel hybrid, where you can have an internal combustion engine of some sort to top the batteries up so it can run on full electric in the low emissions areas? Is that a viable technology for an OEM, or will that always be an aftermarket conversion?
Well, how many different drivetrain technologies do you want to develop in parallel?
Yes.
And think about if you have a certain technical setup that you offer, let's say next year, if you want to sell that truck 6 years later as a used truck, and then there are other technologies available, how will that be? So we need to think in a longer way. And that's why I stated here today that I'm convinced that only battery electric vehicles and hydrogen-based vehicles actually will put us into the position where we can meet the targets given to us by the politicians.
Okay. Do you see MEN offering an OEM hydrogen solution by 2030? Is that something you're hoping to deliver by then?
Technically, that's feasible. Economically is the question to me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you need to see that between an electric truck and a fuel cell driven truck, for example, a lot of components can be commonly used. The electric drive itself,
Yes.
and so on.
Yes.
the way you manage the drivetrain. There are other things that are specific, cooling and so on. And it really depends on lifetime, because the commercial vehicles has way more operating hours than a passenger car.
Yes.
And which technology is really suitable to last the lifetime of the truck.
Yes. Who is going to own the batteries? The batteries are the major source of concern for a lot of operators. They're expensive, they're heavy, they're going to wear out at some point. No one quite knows how long they're going to last in a heavy commercial application. Will you have to take some sort of ownership or leasing responsibility away from the operator rather than buy the batteries and take all the risk?
What is truly the risk? I know that there are concerns. I think we need to state what batteries are capable of doing. Different from other manufacturers, it's essential to us that we do the battery packs by ourselves, that we develop them ourselves, that we also take them back and recycle them. Yeah, that's important. I stated today that over the lifetime of a truck or a bus, you need to replace the batteries once in the lifetime. And that's the base of my statements regarding TCO. I think, considering all the subsidies that are politically in our discussion, it's essential that the customers buy the complete vehicle, and that we provide them, if they want to, a kind of a warranty package with it, so that this concern, which is, I think, more a commercial than a technical concern, is taken a little bit away from them.
Okay.
Yeah, that could be one of the ways of handling it. And with the fuel cell also, with the technology that we have in place today, also there needs to be replacement over the lifetime.
Yes.
And that also comes to account when you come to a cost comparison on that.
Yes.
Yeah. And I really enjoy these discussions, not only now with you, but also with customers on this, because those are the topics we need to resolve together.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not just CO2. Zero emissions vehicles are intended to tackle local pollution like NOx and particulates. And urban areas, that's the big focus at the moment with our low emission zones in several towns and cities.
Yeah.
You talk about the total cost of ownership. Now, one way to tip the cost of ownership balance in favour of zero emissions vehicles is by having zones where you have to charge, where you pay to go in without them. What's your view on the best way to incentivise operators to adopt low emissions technology? Is it the big stick with a £50 a day charge, or is there a better way to incentivise people?
A £50 charge per day is enforcing you. Yeah, and maybe there need to be restrictions at a certain point, but I'm more a friend of enabling things and making it more desirable.
Yes.
So that's why I'm saying, if I offer you, let's say in 2025, an electric truck, and you see that can be operated cheaper than the diesel truck, then we do not have to have this discussion, and there do not need to be any restrictions or payments. You just see, if I go electric, it's cheaper, and I can be more competitive against others.
Yes.
And that's, I think, our joint challenge that we need to resolve.
Yes. I mean, at the moment, electric trucks are several times more expensive than a conventional diesel. At what point will the volume production, the economies of scale, start to bring more parity in the purchase price? Or is that never going to happen? The batteries are always going to be more expensive than diesel?
Well, I could not say. It depends on the application, and in some segments earlier and later, but I think around the mid of the 20s we'll truly see a massive shift.
Okay.
Because then again, other battery generations are available. Prices from today's prediction will be again on a different level.
Yes.
And then we come to this point where on a broader base, we'll see that.
Okay. Is MEN working alone on this battery electric technology, or do you have cooperation within VW and Traton, or is this something that you as a company are pursuing alone?
Well, different from other OEMs, we see the battery, the motor unit itself, and some key components as core competence, as we have our diesel engines today.
Yes.
And that's why we decided to develop that for our own and utilize that to differentiate ourselves. So within the Traton group, it doesn't make sense to develop everything double for each brand.
No.
So that's why we have a kind of a work share where a brand takes care of certain systems or components for all brands.
Right.
And then it's up to the brands themselves to integrate it into their vehicle according to their product strategy.
Yes.
And I think that's a very smart way of doing it to generate scale effects
Yes.
and utilize the resources that we have in the best manner.
Yes. So do you think MEN, you want to see it as the technology leader within the Traton Group on full electric? Is that your positioning for the brand?
If you're saying technology leader within the group, it would imply that we have a competition internally. That can sometimes be interesting, but the competition is outside of Traton.
Okay.
So together we want to be quicker than our outside competition. And that's why we are speeding up together among all brands.
Excellent. Fantastic. Felix, thank you very much indeed for coming in. It's been very interesting talking to you.
My pleasure.
And I hope you have a good rest of the show. Thank you
Thank you
very
so
much.
much.
Thank you.